Racism has been impacting the WNBA well before this year. In that way, I do think Caitlin's being used as a pawn. Caitlin didn't bring racism to the WNBA.
After a whole season of Caitlin Clark and her fans being blamed for racism in the WNBA, Sue Bird comes out with the truth.
What if Caitlin Clark was never supposed to succeed in the WNBA? What if the biggest obstacle she ever faced wasn't a towering defender in the paint or a high-pressure buzzer-beater shot, but the league itself? Because right now, it's looking more and more like Caitlin Clark wasn't just challenged, she was targeted. Not for her talent, not for her stats, but for the sheer audacity of stealing the spotlight before the league could figure out what to do with her. And the curtain started to pull back when Sue Bird, yes, that Sue Bird, spoke up. And whether she meant to or not, what she said cracked the door open on something many had suspected, but no one dared say out loud.
Got 9 off the bench.
Golden State within 1, 61-60. Clark stepping back. Travel. Tiffany.
It started subtle. Whispers, an eyebrow raised here, a technical foul there, a record-breaking season brushed off like a group project. And now, with Sue Bird throwing gasoline on the fire, intentionally or not, the suspicion is turning into certainty. This wasn't just growing pains, this was a strategy. A quiet, backdoor attempt to shrink the moment before Caitlin Clark could fully stand in it.
Can we just call a spade a spade? Racism has been impacting the WNBA well before this year. This is not a new thing. Sure. This is
Let's not kid ourselves. Caitlin didn't stroll into the WNBA. She bulldozed in. She came from Iowa with a resume hotter than asphalt in July, lighting up college basketball like Times Square on New Year's Eve. Fans followed her. The media followed her. Heck, even people who hadn't watched a women's game in a decade suddenly knew her name. That kind of attention doesn't go unnoticed, especially in a league desperate for a boost. You'd think that would make her a golden ticket, but instead of embracing her momentum, the WNBA acted like she was radioactive.
This has been happening, and that I think is what's been such a shock for all of us, that other people are surprised by this. I would have loved to have shut up and dribble. I would have been loved to have been.
Here's where it gets spicy. Sue Bird, long considered the wise elder of the league, went on her podcast with Megan Rapinoe and let a few truths slip. She said what many players and insiders had been dancing around. Clark was getting hit with extra scrutiny. The fans were getting demonized. The media was being manipulated. She didn't exactly name names, but she didn't have to. You could feel the tension in her voice, the frustration, the exhaustion, and that one phrase she kept coming back to, that has to go. Bird wasn't just talking about the toxicity around the games. She was calling out a mindset, a mentality that sees new fans as outsiders, that views Caitlin Clark's rise not as a blessing, but as a threat, that sees her breaking records and filling arenas, and instead of saying, wow, this is what we've needed, says, tone it down, rookie. And that mindset isn't just coming from bitter players, it's coming from the very top.
Spoken about just for my play, but nobody ever let us do that. So what happened? We understood that in order to push our league forward, we were going to have to combat these things.
Enter Kathy Engelbert, commissioner of the WNBA and apparently self-permitted ringmaster of this chaos. Now, a commissioner's job isn't easy. You have to juggle player welfare, league business, broadcast deals, sponsorships, and public image. But Engelbert's handling of the Caitlin Clark moment has felt less like leadership and more like improv. Bad improv, the kind where someone throws out a brilliant idea, like, say, Clark's unstoppable popularity, and instead of building on it, they shut it down because it didn't follow the script. The clearest example? The now infamous rivalry narrative. Engelbert thought she was cooking up the next Magic vs. Reese, white vs. black. That last part? Yeah, she said the quiet part out loud. She framed their dynamic explicitly in racial terms, suggesting this contrast would bring eyeballs. That's not strategy, that's desperation, turning the league's two biggest stars into props for a marketing gimmick.
Walk me through your perspective on the flagrant foul, and what was the point you were trying to make to her?
It's just a good take foul, you know? If you don't, either Angel gets...
What's worse, this approach didn't just backfire, it splintered the fan base. It turned Clark supporters into a punchline. Suddenly, Clark fans meant racists, trolls, and toxic outsiders. Never mind the thousands of little girls who bought her jersey, screamed her name from the stands, and cried happy tears just seeing her shoot. To the league, they weren't new lifeblood. They were a problem. Let's talk about the officiating, because this wasn't about missed calls or human error. This was a pattern. Caitlin Clark would barely show emotion, slap a backboard, look at a ref sideways, and boom, technical foul. Meanwhile, other players could scream, throw fits, and melt down without so much as a whistle. The message was loud and clear. Different rules apply, not because of what she did, but because of who she is. And that's what set the internet on fire.
Wide open 2 points, or, we send them to the free throw line. Nothing malicious about it. It's just a take foul. Every basketball player knows that.
See, when Sue Bird said fans needed to stop being divided into Clark fans and Fever fans, she was speaking to a larger issue. The league had created a dividing line. You were either old school, loyal to the culture and its veterans, or you were new school, here for the Caitlin Clark show. That's not unity. That's sabotage. And if you think fans didn't notice, think again. The Rookie of the Year moment was the biggest slap in the face. Clark earned it. No one with 2 eyes and a working brain would deny it. She broke records, lifted ratings, and dragged the Fever out of obscurity. But how did the league reward her? A phone call, no press conference, no ceremony, not even a tweet with confetti, just a quiet, "Congrats, now go play." That wasn't an oversight, that was a message. Stay in line. Don't outshine the rest.
This is my kingdom come. When you feel...
And let's talk about those tensions Sue Bird referenced. The Connecticut Sun game wasn't just a mess, it was a preview of everything wrong. Fans almost got ejected for defending Clark. Players acted like she was an unwanted guest at their table, and yet the league did nothing. No real statement, no clear stance, just shrugged shoulders and more silence. But it's not just silence, it's complicity, because every time the league downplays her impact, every time they avoid naming the bias, they're reinforcing it. And Sue Bird, she's finally had enough. Her comments might have sounded careful, but read between the lines and you'll find fire. She's not just protecting Clark, she's warning the league. This isn't sustainable. You don't grow a league by punishing excellence. Caitlin Clark's story should be a celebration. She's the bridge between eras. The reason ESPN finally gave a damn. The reason girls in middle school know what a step-back three-pointer is. And yet, the WNBA is treating her like a glitch in the system, like her fame is a problem to fix instead of a miracle to build around.
I've heard me reference this when talking to Jewel and Stewie. It's the offense we ran in Seattle, but I gotta take it back a little bit and give you a little bit of an origin story. So Jenny Busek, who became our head coach in 2015 and introduced this offense to us in that year, she had worked with the Dallas Mavericks and with Rick Carlisle prior. Nothing official, but she knew Rick for many years and she would go to their training camps. You know, it's back in the days of Dirk Nowitzki, and she would really study. She would really study their offense.
That's not how dynasties are built. That's how they crumble. Let's break this down further. What kind of leadership sees a once-in-a-generation athlete fall into their lap and chooses to put her under a microscope instead of on a pedestal? What kind of culture elevates gatekeeping over growth? What kind of message does it send to rookies who dare to outshine the veterans? Caitlin Clark wasn't asking for special treatment. She was asking for equal treatment. For a league that claims to celebrate trailblazers, they sure seem terrified of the one they've got. Sue Bird's accidental truth bomb revealed what many had whispered for months. The WNBA isn't just underprepared for Clark's rise, they're actively working to contain it.
And a lot of times in that 2015 and then even in the 2016 training camp, she would show us clips from the Dallas Mavericks because this is how they played. Now the flow offense, if I had to loosely define it, it has to do with read and react. You've heard me say it has to do with a controlled chaos. A lot of traditional offenses, you know, there's transition where you're able to get out and run, and then there's play calling, right? You're calling sets, you're trying to get a certain look. There might be one op.
Why? Simple. Control. The league built a hierarchy, a culture of seniority where veterans run the room. Clark broke that. She didn't tiptoe in, she kicked the door off the hinges, and the old guard didn't like it. So instead of mentoring her, they mocked her. Instead of welcoming her, they warned her. And instead of protecting her, they let her take hit after hit without a helmet. Now imagine if the league had done the opposite. Imagine if they'd embraced her the way the NBA embraced LeBron. Imagine if they'd built her up instead of boxing her in. She could have been the WNBA's Steph Curry, drawing fans from across the world, redefining the brand. But instead, they tried to keep her in the shadows. It won't work.
Option, maybe a second or a third, and that's about it. But the flow offense, it's very free in that we're trying to get option 1, 2, or 3, but we understand we might not get those, and we might be going to option 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that's the beauty of it. It was a limitless option type offense. I digress. So Jenny comes to Seattle, teaches us this offense in 2015. We run it in 2016 and 17. And even though she left the Storm, we continued to run it. And that's where myself...
Because you can't put a lid on a volcano. You can't dim a supernova. Clark is the moment, whether they like it or not. And if the league doesn't get behind her, they'll find themselves behind everyone. The fans, the media, the culture. Because momentum waits for no one. And Sue Bird, she might have thought she was just venting. But what she did was open the floodgates. Now people are talking. Now the questions are louder. Why the texts? Why the silence? Why the disrespect? And the league's answers so far are weak at best.
Jewel, Stewie, Alicia Clark, add in Natasha Howard. We really started to perfect this offense. Now, what's interesting is the other part of this flow offense that makes it different, makes it exceptional, makes it hard to scout, hard to play against, is that you're playing with pace. Now, when I say pace, I actually don't mean the statistical category that you might find in an advanced box sheet, right? I'm literally talking about how fast.
It's not just about Caitlin Clark anymore. It's about what kind of league the WNBA wants to be. One that uplifts talent or one that protects the status quo. One that grows or one that gatekeeps. Because here's the reality. The WNBA needs Clark more than she needs them. She's bringing the heat, the eyes, the energy. She's doing the work the league failed to do for years, making women's basketball cool, and if they don't see that, they deserve to get left behind.
You play, how fast you push the ball, how fast you cut, how fast you're able to read, react, and make decisions. So it's like a physical speed, but it's also a mental speed that you're playing with. The thing about flow, though, is because you're playing with that pace, it really has to become a lifestyle. You have to live it. You have to practice it every day. You have to do drills that are going to encourage this, that are going to back it up. We used to have this one drill.
The WNBA's tug of war over Caitlin Clark didn't end with Sue Bird's podcast. That was just the opening salvo. Now the real drama is unfolding in locker rooms, in boardrooms, and across social media. The league's uneasy truce with its brightest star is cracking wide open, and what's about to spill out could change women's basketball forever. First, there's the Locker Room Whisper Network. Veterans who once tutored rookies are now exchanging sideways glances. Some wonder if speaking up for Clark is a betrayal. Others feel guilty for staying silent. It's become a moral minefield. Stand with the rookie and risk alienating the establishment, or stay quiet and be complicit in a cover-up. Either way, players are learning that solidarity can be costly.
Where, a certain time would go on the clock, let's call it anywhere from 12 to 14 seconds. You had to go full court. Everybody had to touch the ball. You also had to get certain actions, right? Is it a pick and roll? Is it a backdoor? Is it a post up? Is it a flare screen? The coach would yell out certain actions, and you had to get this all done within 12 to 14 seconds. So it was all about, again, making quick decisions and playing fast. The other part of it is you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because the truth is you are going to come down.
Sponsors are watching too. Brands that lined up to back the WNBA when Clark arrived are growing nervous. They invested in her star power, but now they see their logos caught in a crossfire of controversy. If the league can't control the narrative, those partnerships could evaporate. For companies, unpredictability isn't attractive. They want stability, players celebrated, games sanctioned fairly, and headlines focused on basketball, not backroom politics. Then there's the commissioner's office, where Engelbert's advisors are scrambling for damage control. Memo after memo circulates about positive messaging and unifying themes. But they're writing these memos in a vacuum, unaware that fans have tuned in to the raw truth. You can't spin your way out of a credibility crisis when the person at the center, Caitlin Clark, holds all the cards.
Down the floor. And, you have a player like Brianna Stewart. Of course, you're trying to get her the ball in certain spots, but teams guard that. Teams scout that. So you have to be willing to stay open-minded to the fact that anything could happen. And that's where a lot of the confidence comes from, right? We play fast, we wear teams down. By the fourth quarter, you can hear them huffing and puffing. But when you actually, find the weak link in the defense, when you're able to exploit certain things and you have that open mind.
Social media has become ground zero. Clark's supporters flood Instagram with clips of her highlights, tagging the league and demanding recognition. They post screenshots of biased calls, rallying behind hashtags like FairPlayWNBA. Meanwhile, the skeptics mock the noise as tribalism. Yet even they can't deny the avalanche of views every time a clip of Clark breaking ankles or draining threes appears. Engagement has never been higher. Media outlets sensing a story bigger than any box score are digging. Investigative pieces are asking pointed questions. Are techs being assigned differently? Did the league pressure referees? What internal directives exist about marketing rookies? The WNBA's usual PR shield is dented. Facts and figures now back up what Sue Bird hinted at. There's a system designed to contain Clark's shine.
It just gives you more and more confidence. So what makes flow offense difficult to run? You really need high IQ players. What makes flow offense difficult to guard? It's unpredictable and it's exhausting. And like I said, by far my favorite offense to play in. Next up, I'm gonna do a little preview of the Commissioner Cup final. That is coming up on Tuesday, July 1st. Just a quick refresh. The winning team gets to split a $500,000 pot amongst its players. The runner-up or the loser.
Behind closed doors, coaches are divided. Some preach calm and continuity, telling Clark to focus only on her game. Others take a risk and publicly defend her. The UT Arlington coach, speaking anonymously, told reporters that he's never seen such blatant double standards in officiating. His candor inspired other voices, and suddenly the coaching fraternity is at war over transparency versus loyalty. Officials, once silent, are feeling the heat. Whistleblowers claim they've been pressured to keep things even by tightening calls on one player over another. Anonymous testimonies suggest informal meetings where referees were reminded who the leaders of the league are. Those reminders blurred the line between fair play and favoritism. Now, under threat of exposure, some are ready to talk.
Losing team, they get $10,000 per player each. I also think there's like some crypto in there, but who knows what the hell that is. All right, so it's Indiana versus Minnesota in the final. And I think what's most interesting about this matchup is that they haven't played each other yet this season. So it's totally fresh. You don't really know what you're gonna see. So I'm gonna check out the stats and see if I can maybe pull some things. It's interesting because they're kind of sort of similar in some ways, right? Like offensive rating, Minnesota's third, Indiana's fourth.
Meanwhile, the WNBA Players Association is in an awkward spot. Their mandate is player welfare, but they've avoided taking sides. The rank and file for a statement in defense of Clark grow louder. A delegation of players plans to meet with Engelbert. They want a guarantee, equal treatment, transparent officiating guidelines, and an official celebration for Rookie of the Year. The question looms. Will the league listen, or will it double down on division? Community programs, once the pride of the league, are also feeling fallout. Clark's clinics for young girls were grassroots gold, but now some local partners hesitate to host events under the WNBA banner. Fear of being caught in the controversy has become a real concern. And that's ironic. The very controversy the league sparked is now threatening its own outreach.
Defensive rating, there's a little bit of separation. Minnesota's first, Indiana's fifth. But there's a lot of other similarities. And so I'm just gonna go based off some stuff where there's a lot of separation, right? So first and foremost, can Indiana, who is 11th in opponents' free throw attempts, stop fouling Minnesota? Because you cannot give Minnesota easy points. So you gotta keep them off the free throw line. Also, can Indiana, who's in the bottom half of the league in turnovers, limit them against a defense?
On the court, the tension is palpable. Opponents approach Clark with extra physicality, knowing the refs might let more slide. That plan only fuels frustration and more tax. Clark, ever composed, now finds herself balancing brilliance with battlefield tactics.
Defense that is third in forcing turnovers. So those are just like two quick areas that you can keep your eye on. I think for Indiana's offense, and of course, we don't know if Caitlin's gonna be playing, so this is a huge asterisk. It changes everything. But they've added Ari McDonald, and I got to watch Caitlin play in person against Seattle, and one thing I noticed was it'd be really beneficial to her if she had players around her who could create shots for her, right? She has to create a lot of her own shots.
If you're behind the real story, if you believe in leveling the playing field, literally and figuratively, then hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Drop a comment telling us how you think the WNBA should move forward. because together, we're not just watching history, we're writing it. And this game is far from over.